Hello, welcome to another episode of the Richmond BigFooty Tigercast, coming off another fantastic win against the Sydney Swans in a first versus second clash. Our guest tonight, we have Grockadoc coming back for his second week in a row. Welcome back, mate.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to
No
be back.
worries at all. And our second guest is our long-time friend, Captain Blood 17. Welcome, mate.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Good evening, everyone.
No dramas. Oh, big game last weekend. We ended up winning by 26 points, which was a little bit more than what I tipped, but closer to what you tipped, Groc. You must be pretty happy with yourself.
Yeah, if you actually look at it, they perfectly split the margin between what I tipped and what Lounge Lizard tipped, because I think he tipped them by 35 and I went 17, so it's sort of like in between that perfect margin. So yeah, I thought it was actually a really good game, so I'm pretty happy with that one.
Do you reckon it was our best game for the year, win-wise?
I reckon it was. It was one of those ones where sort of, as I expected it to be, a grind for three quarters, and then in that last we just pulled away, sort of like we did against Geelong the week before. I thought we did really well against Jake Lloyd. He was the one that I tipped last week that we really needed to shut down, because he generates so much ball for Sydney off halfback with his field kicking and everything, and he ended up having nine turnovers, I think, in that game. So the pressure we put on him didn't allow him to get his game up and going. But I have a question for you blokes. Has there been a bigger drop-off in form of anyone in the competition as Dan Hanbury over the last couple of years?
It's right up there, isn't it, at the moment? Oh, it's right up there. 2 years ago he was a world beater, wasn't he? He was looking amazing. But yeah, I can't explain why he's dropped off like he has. I really can't.
We chased him hard too back then.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did. Yep.
So I think we dodged a bullet on that one.
The strange thing is that they've got a good supporting cast midfield. It's not like he has to bear the load of the number one man every week. Like, he's got Kennedy, Jack, Jones in there, who all kind of, are going to get good attention. Parker. So, it's not like he has to be the number one man. So it is strange that he has dropped off.
Is that the case of Tom Mitchell going to Hawthorn? That one extra top line midfielder goes out, puts a bit more acid on him.
Yeah,
that could be a good point.
But he's surely, based before he sort of had the slump, based on pure ability, he was still a pretty good player. You'd like to think he'd be able to fight his way through it.
Yeah, it's just, I think he seems to have lost maybe a yard or two of pace, and I think with the way he plays, he's not exactly the contested beast that Kennedy is, and he's not a supreme outside runner like, your Luke Parker and stuff. So I think he's sort of in that zone now where his biggest weapons aren't enough for him to carry on, being the gun that he was. And of course he's had the injuries over the last couple of years, but I really don't see how Sydney can carry him in their midfield too much longer, because they've got decent midfield depth at the moment. And reading their board, their autopsy thread after the game, something that I like to do just to sort of see the tears and everything.
A lurker.
Yeah, I lurk a lot.
I think
especially these days.
Week's been the most weeks I've lurked. I lurked on Sydney's, Adelaide's and West Coast. I had a look at. Who was the other upset? Who did Bulldogs beat?
Mate, Geelong. It was all about Geelong and North Melbourne and Melbourne for me. No, with the three.
I've lurked the Geelong board a lot over the last couple of weeks, living down here, seeing them lose. It is just amazing. Every time Geelong lose, I lurk their threads. But yeah, as I said, reading the Sydney autopsy thread, that they've been wanting Kieran Jack dropped. They've been wanting Hanbury dropped. And to be honest, I can't blame them, because those two have been passengers pretty much all year for them.
This might sound really harsh, and it's no disrespect meant to Kieran Jack, but hand on heart, I did not know he was playing until about halfway through the third quarter. I swear to God I didn't see him, hear him, nothing. I really didn't know if he was out there.
Was he in Gary Rowan's shadow, was he?
Yeah, well, at least Rowan stood out with a few turnovers.
Kieran Jack did nothing.
I really didn't notice him. He just had no impact on the contest whatsoever, and that could be more credit to our guys for shutting him down more than anything potentially.
Which is strange because Jack has a propensity to actually tear us a new one when he plays us, so I'm kind of glad he has a new one. Same as Gary Rowland always usually seems to have a decent game against us, but yeah, they were nowhere to be seen.
Did anyone else think that they were in for a long night when that Ronke kicked the first 2 goals like he did?
Yep.
Not really, because you have a look, how many games this year have we conceded 3 or 4 goals in the first quarter and then came home to win? I know Essendon kicked the first 5 against us and we still beat them comfortably.
Yeah, and obviously Carlton did as well in round 1.
There have been a few sides that have got the jump on us early and we've still managed to peg back, so yeah, I wasn't too worried.
And I suppose the one thing I pointed out in our show last week is if we bomb it in long, their tall defenders are going to cut us to shreds. But we bombed it in long, and Jack Riewoldt just absolutely mauled everyone. How did you see his game, Captain Blood?
One of my notes I've got down here, actually. Obviously, the question's been asked, was it his best game ever? I would say I was there when he kicked 10 against West Coast. I was there for that one. Obviously, wasn't there for the GWS one where he kicked 11. But I would say that's probably his second best game that I've ever seen him play. And only because I rate his performance in the grand final, that was the one that mattered the most, and he stood up for us in that game. But I would say for a home and away round, that's probably the best game I've ever seen him play. And it was funny because on the way there, I was driving here with my brother, who I went and watched the game with, and we did the old schoolyard pick. Who would you pick, Richo or Jack? And I'll probably get crucified and perma-banned here off the board. But I think I would take Jack Riewoldt over Richo. Truth be known, it was a schoolyard pick. That's how much I rate him right now as a footballer and how far he's come along.
Yeah, he's come a long way. I mean, his stats on the weekend: 16 marks and 3 goals, and the 16 marks is a huge number on paper as it is, but it was the fact he was winning 2-on-1s and marking balls in a contest that he really had no right to get.
And
well,
it was. You go, mate.
Sorry, you go. I was just going to say that the key thing about Jack's game now, more than anything, is how much he brings everybody else into the game. So yeah, he clunked a heap of grabs, but it's what he's doing around the ball as well. He's bringing it to ground. He's bringing those 3, the mosquito fleet into it. His work now. His football IQ must be off the charts. With how good his football smarts are unbelievable, Jack Riewoldt, and that's why I rate him so highly. Truth be known, he's as close to the complete package in my eyes as a forward as is in the league.
Yeah. He actually exposed Grundy for pace as well, actually got on his bike, pushed up, and Grundy, being the dinosaur he is now, just couldn't keep up. I think you could sort of see halfway through the third, Grundy got tired and Jack was just running him off his legs, which is pretty much what he needed to do despite, all the marks he was taking. His leading patterns and everything were on par with what he was. I don't think I've seen Jack lead as good as he did at that game since probably 2010 or 11, before he had all those hip injuries and the ankle injuries and stuff. So I think that, as you were saying, mate, I think that's probably his second best game I've seen Jack play in his career.
And even when they moved Aaliyah into him as well, Aaliyah is a better athlete than Jack, I think we can all agree on, but Jack was still beating him to the ball because he's, like you said, he's a smart runner and he timed his leads really well and he was even outbodying him. It was an amazing game to watch. And
he tore Rampy a new one too when Rampy was on him for a fair chunk as well, and even he couldn't get anywhere near Jack.
Now, what about young Daniel Rioli's one-handed ridiculous mark and banana goal? How special was that?
Amazing. Like, that was... I missed that bit. I got distracted by someone coming into the bedroom because I was watching it on Foxtel Go. And, I got distracted and missed it. And I ended up rewinding it just to watch it. And that's one of the best goals I've seen for a while. The way he managed to get up off his knees in one motion and steady off 2 steps and nail that. I reckon that's probably better than Dusty's banana against St Kilda last year from the 50. Like, just the way Rioli managed to nail that goal after the mark was amazing.
It was cat-like, wasn't it? It was just cat-like the way he got up and hit it. It was unreal.
Yeah,
It
brilliant.
was just all one motion. It was, just smooth. And, his importance to the side can't be undervalued. And not only the goals and the things he does like that, but just the pressure and tackling that he creates. And it just helps Butler and Castagna immensely, I reckon. He's just the key to that forward line functioning at its absolute peak.
It helps Butler the most. I think Butler's probably the most offensive of the three. He's got the most offensive traits out of Rioli, Butler, and Castagna. And I think Butler's played his best games with Rioli in the side this year. He's been really, really good because he doesn't have to worry about doing the pressure thing because that's what Castagna and Rioli do better than he does. So it allows him to be more offensive. And of course, we all know Rioli's skill and everything around the ground when he does get the ball is immense as well. And we really missed him. We're a totally different side with Rioli in it than when we aren't, especially with the pressure game we play.
And Vlosten, I know he had that brain fade and threw the elbow back and did deserve a week. Maybe lucky he didn't get more, but that aside, that was one of his best games, I think, for his career as well.
The hanger, mate, that hanger over Buddy, that was outstanding.
That's poster on your wall.
Posterised.
Even at Vlosten's age, you pop that up on your wall. You say, look at this, boys, every time they come over.
Yeah. Absolutely, I guess. And there's probably one bloke we haven't spoke about. You talk about the sum of all parts, and we spoke about what Rioli means to our forward line. How about the return of the human meatball?
Very good return,
mate. Look at what that does to guys like Lambert. Like it just that extra dynamic into our midfield, and It was a very exciting return. I'm a rap for Meatball. Obviously, you've seen my posting on the board about him. This guy is so critical to our success in September. Loved his return. Loved him. Meatball.
Yeah, that's why I was happy for the club to take their time getting him back. Like, I didn't care if we missed an extra 2 or 3 weeks doing a mini pre-season because we weren't in dire straits ladder-wise. We're travelling along all right, obviously. So the fact they were able to get him right, and they can still manage him through it, even if he misses another odd game here or there just to get him through, do whatever it takes because he makes a massive difference.
Yeah, he's actually, for me, probably our third most important player structure-wise if we're getting our best 22 on the park. As you said, just the way it releases, just the way it helps Lambert, but also Cochin, Dusty, because it allows them to spend more time forward and resting. They don't have to be that bash and crash inside midfielder anyway. They can use their strengths on the outside, their skill, their speed and their footy smarts. So it's just Prestia's presence in the team. It just makes us a lot more dangerous, not just through the midfield, but also up forward as well. So I think he's probably our third most important player structure-wise.
Oh, and I think it'd be interesting to see our contested ball numbers now. Now the band's getting back together. It'd be interesting to see how those numbers swing.
I think we actually won the clearances or just lost them, which against Sydney is not a bad result given how much of a contested side they are and their ball winners. So I think that was a big positive out of the game on Thursday night.
The other player I want to talk about, Jack Higgins, obviously has spent a bit more time in the midfield, and it's been quite noticeable that Dim has chucked him in the guts late in the last quarter when the game sometimes is even on the line, so he obviously puts a bit of faith in him. So I'll get your thoughts on that part of his game as well, but also what he did at or was it just after halftime when the boys were on the ground, takes charge, cracks a joke, and everyone walks away pissing themselves laughing in the middle of a game. I mean, that to me just sort of signifies what we're all about.
As an old bloke, I still don't know how to view it. I get it, and I think it's great, but just coming from an old school perspective, it bemuses me a bit. I don't know how to read it, but you know what I mean. It's change. It's a different generation now. It's different thinking. I understand it, and you know what, mate. If it wins us games of footy, then keep going. I couldn't give a shit. Keep going, but it just sort of. Yeah, I don't know. How do you blokes feel about it?
You go.
I loved Higo's game Thursday night. It was probably the best game he's played this year. Obviously, it's being his first year, but I reckon that was the best game that he's played skill-wise. He wasn't making the slight mistakes that he was in previous weeks, with his skill and everything. You'd have to say it'd be a chance for the Rising Star nom this week. I think he's been stiff in a few weeks not to get it. But I'm just pulling up the stats now. But I know he had 20 disposals. I think he had 7 or 8 score involvements as well. And that was playing mostly as a midfielder. So I think that's I think his game was actually really, really decent against decent opposition too. So I think his game was probably the best game we've had by a first-round draftee in a couple of years. I mean, I know Rioli had some decent games, but they were sort of hit and miss. Whereas Higgins' game on the weekend showed that he's probably going to be a decent midfielder at AFL level anyway. So,
and what do you think of the joking at the halftime break, Grock?
I actually love that, to be honest. We all know our side. They're not too uptight. And I think that's one of the things that Cochin mentioned after the grand final. One of the reasons why they've been able to do what they've done is because they're not taking things as seriously as most other sides. You know, they're relaxed. They're not getting stressed out. They're just, you know, just a couple of guys taking the piss out of each other, even during halftime or before the game. It's what they do. They rib each other. They just get themselves in the zone. So I think that's just pretty indicative of where we are as a club right now, just taking things nice and easy and not worrying too much. And good on Higgins for, you know, coming out and doing it in his first year. It actually shows leadership for him to do what he does, you know, taking the responsibility of, you know, lightening the mood, getting the boys relaxed and ready to go for the second half. So I actually loved it.
How do you think it would have been viewed if we had have lost the game by 5 points?
Yeah.
Is it similar to the Power Ranger stance of the Crows? They look like dickheads because they lost, and we were joking around at the start, but if the result was flipped, would everyone have criticised our lack of concentration or whatever they would have wanted to have called it?
I think they might have, but I still think right now it's a good thing what he's doing. Obviously, if we had a loss, there would have been, you know, oh, they're not focused, you know, they're not doing this. But at the same time, the way I look at it, you know, it's one of those things. Higgins is taking responsibility for just keeping the morale up of the group. So even if we had lost, I would have been perfectly okay with it.
I guess the other exciting thing too, I know we're talking about Higgins, but how exciting you got Higgins, who's played, half a dozen games?
He's played 10 now.
10 now. How good's and you got Jack Graham, second-year player. How the next generation's already coming through with the current. You know what I mean? Like, it's amazing when you think of these kids and how intelligent, you know, Dimmer is the way they're handling these kids. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
There's one bloke we haven't talked about after the game against Sydney, and I really want to make mention of this because I was worried about his opponent and what he could do to us. We actually mentioned him last week. But Big Nank, how good was Nank against Sydney? I reckon that's probably the best game he's played for us since he's crossed over against Sydney. He had 18 possessions, 7 of them were contested. He had 4 intercept possessions. He had 4 score involvements, 4 marks, and he had 41 hitouts and 10 tackles. That's a massive, massive game for Nank.
He got himself up.
You know the best. You know the best thing about Nank Curves, if you look at his numbers for the year, he's one of the top ruckmen in the competition. But he's like the best kept secret because everyone's too busy sucking Gorn's dick or what have you, and Nank's just going out there every Saturday, what have you, and he's just getting the job done. And you know what? Keep talking about Gorn. Keep talking about it. Let's keep this guy under the radar because he's killing him. He's killing him.
And he kept Callum Sinclair accountable, because I think all of us last week were worried about what Sinclair could do, because he's been in pretty decent form, and then, the way he can go up forward and take contested marks and kick goals. But Nank totally shut him down no matter where he went. I think he had the 3 rebound 50s and 3 intercept possessions, and they were all on Sinclair in the back half. So I think Nank's game was just amazing, just not for what he did, but what he didn't allow his opponent to do either. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, he was super. The only downfall from the game is the obvious injury to Reece Conker on his 100th game. It's meant to be a celebration. I know he would have enjoyed the fact that his teammates got over the line for him, but that was just shattering to see him go down. And I'm sure you would have heard it through your TV as well, Grock, but to hear the screams of the pain that Conker was in was just heartbreaking. But obviously, best case scenario being it was just a dislocation, not a break, so no surgery required, which is good. But it was really, really nice to see the whole team get around him. And I've even had people from opposition teams say that they've never seen an entire team go over to a player like that on a stretcher. There's been 1 or 2 here or there, but for the whole team to get around him was really good to see.
It's actually going to play into my toast, so I'll do my toast now because it ties in. Toast to Gary Rowan, obviously with the Reece Conker injury, the way he went down. While he was on the stretcher, Gary Rowan was the only opposition player who actually went up and wished Conker well. Sat there for about 5-10 seconds, was just reassuring him that everything's okay, and actually, went and checked on him. Obviously, we know Rowan's had some pretty horrific injuries himself, so I thought that was just a class act of sportsmanship on Gary Rowan's part, and probably the best thing he did all night, to be honest. But yeah, that Conker injury, it was just completely horrific. Just as you said, hearing his screams through Razor Ray's mic that's probably one of the worst things I've heard at the football. Obviously, you hear all these, abusive fans and stuff, and you can sort of deal with that. But when you can physically hear someone screaming in pain, it just goes through. It rocks you to your core. It's a really nasty thing. And even though there was no break, it was a dislocation. The biggest thing for me, having done my ankle at the season launch, is the ligament and tendon damage, because the dislocation itself, that's probably a 5-6 week injury at most. It's the ligament and tendon damage that's probably going to do Conker in, if there is any, because, as I said, I did my ankle at the season launch, and that's been almost 4 months now, and my ankle is still giving me all sorts of grief because of the tendon and ligament damage that I suffered through that. So I think we'll probably be lucky to see Conker again this season. I don't think the club's going to risk him towards the back end of the year if he does manage to get back. But I really can't see him being back before sort of the prelim at best. I think it's just we're better off putting him on the shelf for the rest of the year just to get it really, really right.
Yeah, and it's probably his best year as well, I think. So it's really disappointing to see him go down like that. Anything to add to that, Captain Blood?
Nah, look, I mean, I don't know how many mirrors this bloke is. This bloke is broken. I don't know how many ladders he's walked under, how many black cats he's crossed paths with. It's just like, Christ, can't this bloke just get 12 months, just get a season on the park without something happening to him? It was, it was just upsetting, mate. I was upset for him for the injury, and I was upset for him for the fact this poor prick just can't take a trick. And I hope he gets back. I really do. So that's my take on it.
Like there was something going around on one of the supporter groups on Facebook, and they actually compared Conker's stats to Dusty's stats this year, and they were very similar. The only one that was pretty much, a one-way street was the goal tally, where Conker only kicked 3 or 2 or 3 goals, whatever it was, and Dusty kicked 17. That was really the only stat between the two that's really that was really, one-sided. So I think it just shows you just how good Conker's been, because we know Dusty, while he hasn't exactly set the world on fire this year, he still had a really good season by most players' standards. It's just we hold Dusty to a higher standard than most, so where everyone's a little disappointed by his season so far. But if Conker's on level pegging with what Dusty is in 2018, he's going to be a pretty big loss for us over the next 10 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And we obviously wish him all the best in his recovery, and we hope to see him back out there as soon as we can, but not in a rushed manner, making sure he recovers properly. But yeah, he'll definitely come straight back in when the time is right, no doubt. Grok, you've obviously done your
You've got to feel sorry.
Oh, go on.
Sorry, you've got to feel sorry for Conker's parents, though, too, flying over for the game.
Yeah.
Flying over for his 100th and then having to see that would have been heartbreaking for them.
No, it would have been. I mean, yeah, at least for his sake, I guess, that they could be by his side while he was in the hospital and all that kind of stuff. So that would have been comforting for him on that level. But yeah, definitely not great for them to make the trip over and have to see their son go through it on what should have been a big milestone game for him. But at least the boys got the win for him, and no doubt they would have all raced over and gave him a pat on the back and see how he was after the game. So speedy recovery, Reece. Hopefully you're back out there soon. Captain Blood, you've got the roast for us.
I don't know what happened there, boys. I dropped out.
Oh, you dropped out. Oh, welcome back. Just in time. You've got the roast for us. It's pretty good timing.
iPod, no. Look, I was gonna roast Chompers, but you know what? There's a thread on there. I won't clog up time with that. Just nice to know that Chompers is a mindless dickhead. The vote got up 60%, so the board has spoken.
On your poll.
Yeah, on the poll, mate.
Lucky I reminded you to put that even in there. That no ticket for Tony. Jesus.
Oh, I know, Chompers. What an idiot. But look, what I'm going to talk about just briefly is equalisation, where the current commentary is about should poor performing teams like Carlton or Gold Coast get a leg up. And we've got these commentators in the media now, calling for it. But I'll just simply run a couple of things by you. Richmond and the Western Bulldogs are proof that it can be done. So, in my eyes, Carlton gets stuffed. You're not getting a thing. Gold Coast, they had it all put out to them on a plate. I know there was problems with the setup, but it can be done if the clubs are managed properly and professionally. And since 1999, every single team, bar the Gold Coast and GWS, have actually played in the grand final. So all this stuff of, the imbalances and things like that, not even 25 years, mate. And every single team has played in the grand final. So for me, my roast is on equalisation, and I'm a big no.
Yeah,
get stuffed. We're finally successful.
Well, it's not even about where we're at. It's like every time I see a club might be making a pitch to try and get a priority pick, I'm like, well, how about you develop your talent better and get better coaching in and actually, get the right structures in place instead of going, oh, well, we stuffed that one up, let's get another handout. Like, it shouldn't work like that.
That's my opinion. It's not so much you can give someone all the high draft picks you want. Look at Melbourne. It didn't help them in the early run. The biggest thing for me has always been player development, proper player development. How many early picks has Sydney had over the last decade? How many have Geelong had? They don't get access to the top end talent that most other clubs do. It's just their late round recruiting and their player development has become so good, and I think that's something that we've gotten so much better at as well. I mean, how many late picks and rookies do we have in our side now? I mean, we've got Lambert, who was a rookie, Butler, who was picked 67, Jaden Short, who was a rookie,
Rookie.
Castagna.
Yeah, Castagna. Broad was a rookie. Castagna. Jack Graham was picked 50-something. Dylan Grimes was a
46.
rookie. Yeah, Nank cost us pick 46. You know, we've got so many play. You know, Sam Lloyd, who's borderline best 22 at the moment, was a late pick. You know, it's not so much the picks you have; it's what you do with them after they've been drafted, and that's the biggest thing for Carlton and the Gold Coast is their player development strategies are complete crap at the moment, and they're not going to get anywhere unless that they can actually bring in the support for the picks themselves. I mean, we saw what Melbourne did. I think Melbourne had 17 or 18 first-round draft picks between 2007 and 2012, and it's taken them almost a decade since that started to even be in contention for finals. So, you know, you can have access to all the talent in the world, but if you can't support that talent, it's never gonna work.
Well, you know, they talk about it's normally 5 years for rebuild. I reckon it's actually about 7. It takes about 7 years to actually, by the time you've drafted, recruited, trade, all that stuff, it takes about 7 years for it to all turn around. It's actually longer than people think, I reckon. But if you talk about what we did, you look at Troy Chaplin allowed Rance to develop. You look at the work Marriage did. Everyone laughed when we took Bakahuli and Greg in. But look, having those older blokes, like that they cost us jack shit, those blokes. And we're reaping. We're actually all that stuff we did 5 years ago. We're reaping it now. If that makes sense. Yeah, so it can be done.
And I know Carlton's kind of one of the main teams who have asked for handouts here. I'm just going through their draft picks in recent times. So mainly focusing on the top picks. So they had pick 3, Paddy Dow. In 2016 they had Petreski-Seaton with pick 6. 2015, they had Wiedering with pick 1, Harry McKay pick 10, Charlie Curnow pick 12. 2014, there was a bit of a bomb out with that Blaine Boakhurst and Dylan Vojo Rainbow. That was a bit of a bust. We've all been there though. 2013, Patrick Cripps. So it's not like they've not picked up good players. They've picked up some pretty quality players, really, but something's just not right from a developmental point of view, or just the fact that Sauce is surrounding him with GWS rejects.
Obviously, McKay's had injury issues over his career so far, so that's I actually rate McKay. I reckon he'll be a very good player at AFL level. Obviously, Paddy Cripps is an absolute gun. Petreski-Seaton at the moment, I think, could go either way. He's shown flashes, but he just can't put it together consistently enough. Which you sort of expect that for a second year midfield flanker. He's gonna be inconsistent. But obviously, Wiedering for me is the one that's
he looks nowhere near.
Probably hasn't. He hasn't lived up to the hype and probably the expectations that Carlton fans want now. I mean, this is his 3rd year in the AFL, and it's you would think by now he'd be able to, as a key defender, be able to read body position, mark, and you know just be able to defend well enough. But I mean, they were talking about this on AFL. There was a video and they were talking and they were saying he's not quick enough to intercept like what Rance does. He's not strong overhead to read the flight as well as McGovern does. He doesn't have the kicking skills of Heath Grundy and stuff to set play up as well. So they were saying as a key defender, he doesn't have any sort of real strength, real standout weapons to be a successful key defender. So I think he's the biggest one that Carlton are probably thinking, what do we do? And I personally wouldn't be surprised if they offload Wiedering this year or the end of next year, because I think his trade value is probably going to be the highest it'll be if he continues this way. He's still relatively young. He's only 21 or 22. So I think if Carlton are serious about the rebuild, they probably should be going, maybe trading Wiedering, because he's not. I don't think he's going to really be what Carlton need him to be. So for the type of player that they need, I really don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, he reminds me of Jack Watts.
Yep.
That's what he reminds me of. And that's probably going to be very insulting to any Carlton supporter who listens to it. But that's, when I see him right now, that's what he reminds me of. He's like another version of Watts.
So I think the bottom line...
The biggest thing for me is that he, as a defender, he generally looks scared of body contact. He just looks he looks timid. He's sort of got that Tyrone Vickery avoid contact at all costs sort of
in the space of 2 minutes.
Mentality
being compared to Jack Watts and Tyrone Vickery.
That's just
prove us wrong. Prove us wrong.
And as a defender, I don't think you can have that mentality. You need to be prepared to get, put your body on the line, take the contact from the forward. You need to be able to at least, cop some sort of physical presence as well. And I'm not sure how much of that is his injury history. I know he's had dodgy shoulders and everything, but for someone who was hyped to be the next Alex Rance, I think Wiedering's been a massive disappointment, and I'd even go so far as to say he's been a bust so far.
Agree. So I think the bottom line is Brisbane, Gold Coast and Carlton, no priority pick for you. Learn how to train your team better and just get better at football. It's not hard.
Well, mate, Brisbane's looking really good.
Brisbane doing all right.
They're doing it.
Yeah, we'll cut them some slack. They're looking okay. They're doing a hell of a lot better job than the other two are, that's for sure. At least they're having a crack.
Brisbane were going to be my toast if the Conquer thing didn't come up, but the only time I think a club should be entitled to a priority pick is like in the case of Brisbane a couple of years ago where they lost, I think it was 3 of their first round draft picks in one go with they lost Yeo, they lost Polek and everything. I think that was really stiff, and they probably needed a pick back then because they'd lost all their talent in one foul swoop. So I think in that case a priority pick would have been wanted, but right now it's not warranted for any club. Like invest better.
Yeah.
Boys, I'm just Snake Baker's still going in the North Melbourne Essendon game battery in the main board.
Still? Jesus Christ.
I'm going to give that a browse when I'm done here. I need to catch up and things.
We need a hashtag Snake Explosion.
We should have a segment on the Tigercast called
Snake Watch or something. We can just pick out a few of his posts and go through them, dissect them. We wouldn't be short of material.
No,
I love him. He's a ripper. I love him. He's magnificent. Long Viva La Snake.
All right, we'll push on to the big game this week, the grand final rematch Mark II, so Richmond versus Adelaide. Adelaide being one of the only teams in history to have a premiership hangover minus the premiership, sitting in 11th on the ladder, so they're going extremely well. They obviously had a win last week, which is going to boost them full of confidence, but I'm glad we're playing them at the G, and I really hope we can just end their season, to be brutally honest. Grock, what's your take in the game?
I'm really looking forward to this one. I think Adelaide, they're a weaker side now than what they were when we played them in round 2, especially so at the MCG. I really think I think that we'll probably win this one. The biggest thing for me is against Adelaide, we need to play a second marking forward. We've seen how well it has worked. We've seen how well our game plans matched up against Adelaide over the last, 3 or 4 times we played them, and it hasn't really stacked up apart from the grand final where everything sort of went our way. It's one of those things where I'd be bringing in Callum Moore at least to provide another focal point. I'd probably bring in Callum Moore to replace Conker and push Higgins into the middle, and maybe Garthwaite to come in for Vlosten, because we know Adelaide go in reasonably tall in their forward line as well. So
yeah, I think they're bringing in Lynch this week, I believe. So that would make sense to bring in someone like Garthwaite.
So I think our ends this week should probably be Garthwaite and Moore. If not Moore, maybe Shea Bolton. I think Bolton probably deserves a crack because he's really good in VFL on the weekend. It's just one of those.
What about Townsend for just a grudge match?
I'd bring Townsend in just to completely smash Taylor Walker. Just like, if there's one player in the AFL I hate more than anyone, it's Taylor Walker. I think the way he walks around acting like his shit don't stink, especially this year with the year he's had, I don't think he's got any right to be as egotistical as what he is. But it's one of those things.
I've never forgiven that arsehole when he spear tackled Morrow at the Adelaide Oval a few years ago. And Morrow, he actually required a shoulder reco after that. That arsehole, he picked him up and he put a full body thing and nothing. He didn't get suspended for that. It was bullshit. And I've never liked him since that moment.
Yeah, they were saying if they had had the definition for dangerous tackle back then, they reckon he would have probably got 3 weeks of that these days. But again, it's just shutting down Adelaide's ball movement. You gotta shut Rory Laird down. He's the one that sets them up from half back, and of course, we need someone on Tom Lynch who's that conduit between the back and forward lines with his work rate. So I think. Rioli back in against Adelaide's going to help immensely because we know he's our best pressure forward by an absolute mile. It's just one of those things. I wouldn't be surprised if we smash them again. I think we all know that Adelaide are mentally fragile, especially after the grand final last year and their collective minds camp in Queensland. So I think being back at the MCG, I think that's going to give us a psychological advantage, and I fully expect us to take advantage of it.
And Captain Blood, one of our mantras, I suppose, as a club has been that if we've lost to a team, we've always learnt from it the second time round and got a better result the next time. Do you see this happening again?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the MCG cheat ground factor, whatever you want to call it, we played the game. We play that ground better than anyone. And look, I genuinely think it is a bit of a danger game. I was looking at the ins. Last week, Adelaide got Laird, Sloan, Fogarty back. Fogarty's a big lump of a lad. Tex a couple of weeks back, and like you said, they're getting another key back in. I think, as I said, pace will be the key. How we move that ball off the half-back line, I think we can cut them apart. Vlosten is a monster out. That worries me. Because we've been talking about how well he's been playing. The last probably 2-3 weeks, he's probably been the best footballer of his career. And he would be a massive out for us. Yeah, sorry, mate, go for it.
No, I was just agreeing with you on Vlosten. He'd probably be top 5 in our best and fairest at the moment. He's playing some excellent football.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I think Hooley's still 2 weeks away. But having said that, I agree. I think if Adelaide are going to bring another tall in, then I think probably Garth has to come in. The guy, he cops a bit of criticism on the board, but when you watch him, he's very integral to our backlines, Broady, and Broad seems to have that ability. He's 191 centimetres, but he seems to play on the smalls, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
His game will be critical for us. He was I was watching last week, he was actually standing on Buddy at times and beating Franklin.
So yeah, he's quite mobile. He's surprisingly strong as well. He's a bit of a hybrid player, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He's surprising. But if we bring Garth in, so that's three. You got three big blokes, and then what are we surrounding him with? Short, Broad is 191, and Grimesy might be a little bit top heavy, but may not be. But look, like I said, it's our half-back line that gives us our drive. We know that. And look, whilst a danger game, if we don't win by about 4 or 5 goals, I'd be very, very, very surprised.
Yeah. And look, no doubt they'll be out for retribution on the G, but like you said at the start, Grock, they're a completely different team mentally more than anything from round 2. I mean, a whole different ball game when you're playing on their home deck. Second game in a new season. Had heaps to prove, but they've taken an absolute shellacking since then. So if there's ever a time for us to pounce and really sort of end their season, this week would be the week. So if we just keep on top of them in the midfield, hopefully the rest should sort itself out. We know we're good enough in all other parts of the ground, so it'd be interesting to see if Jack Graham goes to Rory Sloane again. That's one I'll be keeping an eye out on.
I reckon that should be one of the first things we do. Obviously, we know Graham's done some really decent run with jobs over his short career so far. And we all know Rory Sloane's extremely susceptible to getting tagged. he has nowhere near the influence he does when he gets tagged. So Rory Sloane getting tagged for me is a big one. The other one for me is Bryce Gibbs. He's always played out of his skin against us, and he's probably one of Adelaide's most important players now, and he's only been there, 15 weeks. So I think.
Hello? Dropped out there.
Groc's gone.
He's gone. He just bailed on his mid-sentence.
Maybe have.
Oh, you're back. You dropped out for about 5 seconds there. You're talking about Gibbs and it cut out.
Oh, yeah, I was saying Gibbs always seems to have a day out against us, even when he was at Carlton. So I think sending Graham to Sloane first, and then if he doesn't, if Gibbs gets off the chain, maybe have Graham go to Gibbs and have Lambert go with a run with roll with the other one. I think that's probably the smartest bet for us, because those two can be really damaging, and they're obviously the most vital midfielders for the Crows at the moment.
Fair enough. All right, well, before we let you both go, we'll get a quick tip, including margins. So, Captain Blood, I'll start with you. What's your tip for the game and margin?
Tigers by 28.
Hey, Grock?
Richmond by 48.
Thank you. One of us had to do it. Thank you.
To be honest, I think probably 30 points. I think us by 30 points would be a decent result.
Now, I know Makeshift's probably not going to be happy with the margins we've tipped, given his comments in the thread, but yeah, I reckon somewhere between 25 and 30 points. But yeah, just hopefully we can do a number on them and end this season on Friday night, which will be fantastic. A reminder, the game is on Friday night, 7:50pm at the MCG, so make sure we all get down there, wear all your premiership gear, and really get stuck into the Crows fans who turn up. It'll be good for a laugh. Captain Blood and Grockadoc, thanks so much for coming on, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks very much again, Michaels.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Richmond BigFooty Tigercast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and YouTube so you can follow all the roast and toast, the reviews and previews, and all topics Richmond. Also keep an ear out for our special episodes of interviews with past players. Go Tigers.